Hey ratbags, it's Jade with a Nightingale news video today, taking a look at some Q&A that we had with the Nightingale devs in Flexion. I actually joined this pretty late, so I'm actually going over the notes that were made. Real life dad duties took over, but as always, I'm determined to keep you in the loop. So thankfully, Flexion did do a write-up and comes in a whole bunch of answers about where maybe the game went a little bit wrong with launch, what they plan to do in future, what they're working on in terms of content, and how they're going to be evolving and changing maybe progression and working on different types of realms, puzzles and more. So let's get into it. All the info from the Q&A. So straight off, creators were asking questions like, when is there going to be a creative mode? And they've said they want to do it, but it's one of those things in the longer term, as they've been focusing on bugs and fixes, eventually they'll get there. So creative mode eventually, but not yet. When are we going to get bigger updates? They're doing small but frequent ones to address bugs, fixes and add quality of life features. Bigger updates come in post offline mode when we're able to fully focus on content and community development. Will OP guns from exploits be removed? We're working on addressing them. They may be dealt with in a future update. If you've seen the patch earlier on this week, it did finally give back the way that you can reclaim lumber and metal components that you don't no longer need, but now they've increased the amount that it does take. So it costs like 5 refined actions to smelt down into a base metal, and you're no longer able to double and stack any of the stats. But it does mean the guns are still out there. So another, warning, or maybe friendlier warning, try and use them in your own separate private vaults. Put it on hard or extreme to get more essence, rather than ruining the experience for others doing public ones. Someone's asked, what are the 1 or 2 things that you'd like to see outside of offline mode? Remember, offline mode has been confirmed as coming. They've rearranged and changed their approach, and it is going to be something that's going to be added into the game much sooner. One big learning from launch was that the game was hard to understand than we thought internally. We love the complexity and depth in the game, but it comes late and is difficult to understand by some people. So we'd like to improve that. We want to get several updates out that make things more understandable for players when it comes to crafting and their workshops. Now this is an interesting one. What percentage of content is in the game now versus what you expect when it's finished? They've said we're about 10% right now with all the quests and vaults, looking to be around 25 to 30% by the end of early access, moving into 1.0. So you're wondering why that's not 100%, it's because obviously this is going to be a live service style game. Nightingale has always been billed as something they would work on with seasons, and that obviously early access is the point where they're getting everything involved, getting everything set, the baseline. So I can only presume that's why they've not listed 100% as a percentage score here, because that wouldn't really be true until they've done their last season, which could be in a few years. How can I submit more details? They've got a Google form that you can go ahead and fill in, and they're trying to get more feedback about the early game and onboarding so it's more intuitive without being too heavy signposted. New quests are going to be coming in soon with new NPCs. That's in a couple of weeks. A lot of the Victorian aesthetic and fantasy elements are going to come later in the game, so we're working to move that fun and fantasy earlier. How are you going to bring players back? It's no doubt about it. The game has dropped maybe a little bit more even than I thought. It has made me even reconsider what I really wanted to do with Nightingale. Initially, I wanted to make it the one game, certainly until Valheim came out with its next update. But I can't keep making content, videos or live streams if the player base is that low. And at the moment, it's below 5,000 players at peak. So with only a small player base like that, it doesn't really warrant me sticking to that just one game. As much as I enjoy it, and I don't think it's got too far to go to start making it into something really, really great, I've had to start thinking about adding more content in even before the next Valheim update drops. It's a plug. You're going to be seeing some Planet Crafter videos as that approaches its 1.0 on the 10th. Anyhow, they've said they're going to be focusing on the design, keep improving and expanding experiences, and making good on those things that came in below expectations at launch. Understand the community and what they want and continue to plan based on feedback. It's a bit of a wishy-washy answer. Like, it's good, it's what people I suppose want to hear, but no real specifics. And that's okay. They're still collating and going through it. It has only been about 5 weeks since the game actually launched, and I imagine they've got a good few weeks to go to really make sure they've got all the feedback they want before really taking it on board, sorting out what is the priority, what is just coming from a noisy maybe minority, and what the actual data says players enjoy and don't enjoy. Is the build limit bug being addressed, the number counter displaying incorrectly? Yes, in an update soon. Would it be possible to upgrade our tier 1 benches to tier 2 and likewise build pieces the same so you don't have to keep demolishing They've said they don't really have it as a focus right now, so it's going to be how it's going to be, but there is something they think is a good idea. Once they get things out like the build limit out of the way and other updates, it might be something they can work on, especially with the build pieces being able to just upgrade rather than replace or make brand new. Is Hope going to come back? Hope was kind of billed in interviews beforehand as a big component, and then it dropped and it just wasn't there. Like, there was some counters in the early days of the tutorial, but it hasn't really appeared as a mechanic. Maybe in a different context later in the game, but we don't want to share details prematurely. Are you planning to make realms more unique, distinctive from one another? Yeah, we think Gloom and Hunt do a pretty good job at this, but we know others need to have more unique attributes and challenges. We plan to improve that. Is there going to be more puzzles? Yes, more variety is incoming, according to the actual interview, and this is where I jumped in and heard some of this stuff. They've got so many puzzles, they've actually had to tell them to slow down a little bit, as it's still going to take a lot of time for them to properly be implemented. They're working to make the realms more distinct. The first 4 realms don't have enough differentiation, and that's kind of why I started in a desert. I knew everyone would be going for the forest because it's probably one of the easier realms to live in, get plenty of resources, but I knew basically the tutorial would guide you through another 2 forests. I did do a video talking about what I want to see added, what Nightingale needs, and I spoke about different generation of terrain, different types of realms depending on difficulty that you're adding to really make things a bit more extreme when you do load into the Ascended realms. But even I would take some more variation in the actual procedural generation of them. Are you going to be able to change colours on gear, weapon, clothing in future with dyes or similar? Yes, but no date on this yet. It will take a while to implement. That was the big feature that I spoke about when I did Q&A just before the game's release, and they mentioned that then. But yeah, it will be something that's going to take a while, which is a bit of a shame. That's part and parcel of making your character feel personal to you and taking that character from A to B throughout the game, having that look right. It doesn't bother me as much, but I can see a lot of people kind of still being a grumpy that they've still got to be forced to wear the same type of gear because it's got the highest stats. So fingers crossed they do get a hold of that, or at least bring in a bit more variety in some of the clothing, even if we can't actually dye it at the moment. If we can put attributes more on bog standard clothing or some of the earlier sets to make them nearly as good as the endgame gear. What's the thinking behind higher realms right now? Essences are rewards for a lot of the late game realms, but our plan is to get more prestige item rewards in there. Now, I asked about food timers. I said I think it could be good to have maybe food timers in the game, because at the moment you can just stack up a bunch of food and it is a bit of a filler stuff, and I recognise that Nightingale's already got a lot of crafting going on. But apparently, due to some research, they said that basically a lot of other survival games, the most hated features on it are things like spoil times on food. So they might look at that via a realm card or a specific realm. My suggestion was have it as a survival mode, but I think actually a realm card would be just as good. They're also looking at complex food recipes requiring too much input versus output. And there is a bug at the moment where your hunger bar seems to go down quicker than the actual bust that you get from it. That looks like that might be addressed. And there we go, that is pretty much it. It's good. Inflection are doing all the right stuff, taking on feedback, they're communicating well, they seem to be updating every sort of 2 weeks now. We've had changes already, adjusting and really focusing on the big exploits and stuff like that, but also other important things. It does sound like we're going to get something a bit juicier in the next few updates too. So all good. I really like Nightingale. I think it's got a bright future, and I think it got a bad rep from people misunderstanding the type of game it was. I didn't think there was much of an issue with it being offline, but when I've gone through the Steam reviews, I would say about 30 to 40% of the negative reviews I've read focus on that aspect. But certainly there are other issues with the grind and maybe just not being given enough clear direction in the early stages. But in terms of other stuff, I think a lot of good things are happening. The build sets are gorgeous. The way that you can decorate your bases is second to none. I don't have a problem really with the combat. And just like all games, more new content is always going to flesh things out. And yeah, like I said, till then, you're going to see some more news videos taking a look at newer games. And I've got Planet Crafter incoming with the 1.0 version. So until next time, Realm Walkers, I'll see you later.